Folks, we hear it and see a lot of what's going on college campuses throughout the United States. My next guest is someone who is an incredibly courageous individual who, for years, taught on one of those campuses. Every time he comes on the show, I am inundated with requests of getting Dr. Michael Rectenwald back on the show ASAP. For those of you that are new to the show, and we have tens of thousands of new listeners every week on our freedom-based platform. I actually have listeners in all 50 states, and this past week, over 60 countries worldwide. Folks either stream the show live through our stream feed through davejanda.com and WAAM Talk 1600, or by downloading the podcast. Michael Rectenwald is also known as the anti-PC professor who was formerly based at NYU. He is a phenomenal author. Works include Springtime for Snowflakes, Social Justice and Its Post-Mortem Parentage. That really got the social justice warriors fired up against Michael. Google Archipelago, and his most recent book, Beyond Woke. In addition, Michael's essays have appeared in numerous periodicals and anthologies, including the British Journal for the History of Science, Endeavor, and George Eliot in Context. Michael has also made media appearances on numerous national and international networks, including MSNBC, Fox News, Fox Business News, and many more. Michael obtained his Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Pittsburgh, his master's degree from Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, and his PhD from Carnegie Mellon University. He is the former professor of global liberal studies at NYU, Dr. Michael Rectenwald. Mike, welcome back to Operation Freedom.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Mike, right off the bat, the best way for folks to monitor you, to interact with you on a daily basis, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, just michaelrectenwald.com. That's Michael, Rectenwald, Rectenwald.com, one word. Everything's there, Dave, including the previous interviews with you on my media page, essays I've written, links to my books, and sayings that I've given, and also photos of my readers.
Mike, educate our listeners on your latest work, Beyond Woke.
Oh, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, Beyond Woke is just what it's saying. How do we get beyond this woke phenomenon that we're dealing with? And I think I give plenty of answers of how to get beyond woke. And we see what wokeness is. Wokeness is a totalitarianism. It's a hyper-PC, hyper-social justice movement that aims at shutting down the non-woke and replacing them with the woke. And they mean this. They mean effectively trying to ban anybody that doesn't subscribe to their ideology from all venues. And we see this effort going on Fox with the pulling of advertisers from Tucker Carlson's show. We see this with editors being canceled at the Philadelphia Inquirer, the New York Times, and so on. I mean, they are trying to use their bludgeon of wokeness against any and all people who differ from what their totalitarian ideals are. And
Mike, you have
Beyond Woke goes into this in detail.
Mike, you have been ahead of the curve on this woke issue. And in fact, when I saw, let's call it the People's Republic of Chaz, C-H-A-Z, develop out of and form, if you will, in Seattle, which Chaz stands for Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone.
Uh-huh.
Mike, this is exactly what you have spoken about and have taken immense grief about. That you've outlined that this was coming, and here's what it's. And people were saying, well, I think Mike Rectenwald, I think Dr. White, he's a good guy, but I don't think it's ever going to get to this level that he's talking about. Mike, this is exactly what you've been talking about.
Exactly what I've been talking about. I said that these totalitarians would step up their game. They would attempt to try to cede from the United States, to invalidate the U.S. Constitution, and that includes eradicating our rights, as they're doing in the Republic of Chaz, eradicating the right to speech, like eradicating the right to property, eradicating the right to assembly other than their assembly. And I asked very curiously, what would Antifa feel if Antifa 2.0 came by and burned down Chaz? I mean, they are, after all, utter and total hypocrites. Everything they're doing violates everything they said they were against or for. I mean, they said they're against the police, and then they announced that they are the police. They said they're against borders. Now they have armed borders. They said they were against property. Yes, that's true, but they're only against the property of people who do not have the right identity, that is, white people. So now they're asking for $10 from every white person to be transferred to a black person. This is the beginning of taxation. They said they were against states. They are a state. These are complete hypocrites. They display it's on full display the hypocrisy of leftism. Couldn't be any clearer.
Well, and Mike, the first thing they did when they established, took people's property. I mean, they stole people's property to have this 6x6 block area. The first thing they did, Mike, they erected a border wall around their compound, which for years they have just chastised not only President Trump, but anyone that spoke about a border wall on the southern border.
Yeah, anybody that spoke about a border wall was a racist. And yet they have an armed border wall, and they demand your ID when you go into Chaz. So basically, these are people that are against IDs for voting, IDs for any national identity or any identity at all. And what do? They demand your ID before you can enter Chaz, and they only allow you in if you have the right, identification. So it's unbelievable, but it really speaks to this totalitarianism that has swept across the nation from our cultural institutions, especially academia, into social media and the media itself. This is just a full-blown totalitarian wave that we're up against here, Dave.
Well, and speaking to that, Mike, one of the second things they did after they established these border walls, remember, they did this because of the brutality, the weaponization of the police force in Seattle and everywhere in the country. Second things they did after the wall is they have armed guards around their compound, and if someone speaks out on something they don't deem to be appropriate, they start choking them.
Yeah, that's what they did. They brought down a guy that was preaching Christianity inside of Chaz. They brought him to the ground and effectively kneeled on him, just like they were complaining about the kneeling on the victim who died in Seattle. So effectively, it's not that they're against power or they're against the state or they're against police. They want to be that, and they've always been like this. Antifa has shut down speakers across campuses all across the United States. They have shut down events everywhere. As you know, in Berkeley, they burned the campus to the ground when a speaker to the right of Stalin dared to set foot on campus. This has been their MO all along. I said it from the beginning, these are totalitarians. They laugh and they say, well, no, we're against totalitarians. I said, no, you are a totalitarian. And it's very evident now.
So, Mike, many times I've asked you about how to deal with social justice warriors, and your recommendations have been beyond spot on. And I know that for a fact because I then take your recommendations and I take a walk in the academic quad at U of M and actually give them a run through, and they work, Mike. I mean, I have them running away screaming.
Yeah,
no, really.
But now they're armed. So how do we get them? How do we deal with them now? Once we see their true colors coming out, there's a different set of questions that we might ask. There's a different set of approaches we might take, because now we're dealing with their overt armed militant element, and that's Antifa. I've always said that Antifa was the armed infantry of the social justice movement, and that's exactly what they are. They're the foot soldiers trying to clear the way for social justice wokeness to overtake the country.
So, Mike, if President Trump was listening to this broadcast, How would you have him approach this? What would you have him do to bust apart Chaz?
Chaz, the first thing I would do is go to these armed guards and demand their registration and license to carry weapons, because I guarantee you they're not licensed. These are people that are illegally toting arms. And the interesting thing is the left is so anti-gun until the guns are in their own hands. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
They've been talking about disarming the American public, but the first thing they do when they have some so-called autonomy, which is a joke, of course they're not autonomous at all. They're begging for food from the outside and so on and so forth. But anyway, the first thing I would do is say, where are your gun permits? Where's your license to carry? An open carry at that. I guarantee you 10 to 1 they have none of this. Then I'd basically break it up by virtue of the fact that they have no right to ban other people from legally public space. They have no right to eradicate the right and the freedom of movement and assembly of Americans. So get rid of their guards, and then I would have 1,000 or more patriots walk into the Chad together. Walk in there with Trump hats on or whatever regalia you wish to display, including flags, and see what happens. I guarantee you what will happen is these Antifa militant armed fanatics will attack, and then they should be put in jail. They belong in jail. They're usurpers of the law. They're usurpers of other people's rights. They're nothing but fascists who are disguising themselves as anti-fascists, the most ironic and contradictory and hypocritical configuration imaginable.
Mike, I've been very critical of the FBI. The FBI for years was intent on removing a duly elected president of the United States, and all you have to do is look at the transcripts from the illegal surveillance they were involved in, whether it was under direction of Mueller or Comey and covered up by Wray. I have been very critical of the FBI that they have allowed Antifa and these other social justice terrorist groups to actually gain in stature, gain in strength over the years, when in fact, rather than trying to undermine a duly elected president and frame a duly elected president of the United States, they should have been working in counterterrorism and counterintel and be breaking down these subversive groups within our country, but instead they focused on the framing of a duly elected president.
Not only that, Dave, I don't know if you saw a video of the incident in which FBI agents actually took a knee.
Yeah.
Took a knee in subservience to Black Lives Matter and Antifa radicals. They took a knee. So they're basically saying, we bow to you. You're the boss. Whatever you need to do, go ahead and do it. So, I mean, there is a deep state complicity here. Absolutely. They should have been defusing these networks. These are terrorist cells that are all over the United States. They're terrorist cells. They should be broken up like any other terrorist cell. These people are tyrants who are trying to undermine the United States constitutionally, legally, and really. So, yeah, they should have been working on that. Instead of taking a knee, they should be taking it to these people. It's unbelievable, Dave. I just can't believe it. But, it doesn't surprise me because, Antifa has recruitment networks all over college campuses in the United States. Can you imagine if Hamas had open recruitment networks in United States campuses? What would be the response? Well, maybe nothing. Who knows? But, this is what's going on. And they have a professorial network, a network of professors for Antifa that are actually giving them ideological cover.
As well as administrators, Mike. As you might be aware, I graduated, my undergraduate degree was from Bucknell University in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Yeah. And last September, the president of the university, Brovman, not only brought an Antifa supporter, an active member of Antifa, on campus, but funded that individual's travel to come on campus and lecture to the students, to present to the students. And I believe in the process, put every student, every staff member, every faculty member in harm's way by bringing a terrorist on campus. And there were several of us who voiced opposition to this, to bring a terrorist from a known violent terrorist organization on campus. The vast majority of the professors and the students were, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
They're legitimating them. They're applauding them. They're supporting them. They're abetting them. And they're utterly complicit, at least. If not, actually, I wouldn't be surprised if administrators were members of Antifa. After all, there are lawyers that were members of Antifa in New York who threw Molotov cocktails. Okay, so this would not surprise me in the least if you had administrators actually operating as Antifa agents. I'm not kidding.
Well, and I believe the rioting and looting that occurred after the needless death of George Floyd, and everyone, for the most part, everyone watched that, and it was horrendous, and nobody I'm aware of has said, oh, well, that wasn't as bad as the video showed. No, it was bad, and it never should have happened. And the police officer that was involved in that, and officers, should be held accountable, and the rule of law should be implemented. But here's and protesting, Mike, and you've done your share of protesting, and frankly, what I do every week on this show is a peaceful protest. This country is built on peaceful protest. However, when peaceful protests morph into rioting and looting, which are criminal acts, that's where the line gets drawn. But many people don't want that line drawn.
Especially Democrats, and they were all actually applauding the looting and the rioting. They were effectively saying, oh, these are just like the American revolutionaries, in the Boston Tea Party. They were saying all kinds of things that legitimated and endorsed this. But what they don't understand is that we are a republic which is a nation that has certain laws, but has rights, according to us. It wouldn't be so bad to protest, and in fact, it is good to protest. But once you start infringing others' rights, which is what Antifa does by default, that's their default mode. Knock people over the head. Knock Andy Ngo, the Japanese reporter, over the head. Throw mace in his face. Throw all kinds of things at him. Hit him with crowbars. That's what they do. So they are infringing on rights while they claim to be anti-fascist. It's unbelievable. There's nothing more fascist than them. And, can you believe that they're according these people legitimacy in media, in the Democratic Party establishment, in the universities, all throughout the United States? I fought against this. I spoke up against this in 2017 when Mark Bray, a professor, I think, at Chicago, wrote a treatise in response and in defense of Antifa.
And Mike, let's turn to Black Lives Matter, because if anyone says anything against Black Lives Matter, they are demonized as being a racist.
Right.
The Black Lives Matter movement, if you look at its origins, a number, and tell me if I'm wrong, but a number of the founders of Black Lives Matter are in fact rabid communists.
It's not only that. Even if they were rabid communists and they were associated to support this movement of stopping the murder of black people by police, or the killing, because in some cases they're justified killing. But even if they were communists and they were merely associating with another block of people, that's not criminal in itself. But this is their principles. Their charter is communist. They are against capitalism. They have an anti-capitalist ethos. Their whole movement is against capitalism. They're against the free enterprise system. So they are, in effect, infringing people's property rights de jure and in fact. That's what they're about.
Well, my concern also, Mike, is with the Black Lives Matter movement. If you're going to say, okay, Black Lives Matter, all Black Lives Matter. But when you look at how Black Lives Matter protests, they protest as though only some Black Lives Matter. Where are the protests about the thousands of blacks that are dying at the hands of other blacks in urban centers and urban cities around our country when there's not a word said about that? I can understand. I can understand if you're going to talk about a white police officer shooting and killing a black individual. Okay, But that is roughly unarmed last year, 9 people. Okay, though that never should have occurred in those 9. They need to be investigated, rule of law. But what about the thousands of blacks that are dying that Black Lives Matter never addresses?
Not only that, how about the black officers, 2 at least, who have been killed in the line of duty by this movement? So they have actually murdered 21 people in total that have been attributed to this protest movement, which I think is a camouflage for Black Lives Matter and Antifa. They have provided cover for these 2 organizations to loot, to burn down not just white businesses, no, but black and Chicano and other Hispanic businesses all over the place. What about their lives? What about the officers who were black that were shot? What about the black businesses that were burned? What about the black communities that have been destroyed, whose lives are for all effective purposes, destroyed and have to be utterly rebuilt? You see video after video of black women, business owners, or just people in the community that have nowhere to shop now because their grocery stores, their drug stores, their fast food stores have all been burned to the ground by these arsonists. What about those black lives? See, they're not about black lives. They look and they use black people, black identity, and other so-called subordinated groups as weapons. They're using them as weapons. The real target here is the so-called man. Anybody, what they think are the enemies of these people. They don't care about the people. Those are blunt instruments that they use to enact their agenda.
So what would be the best ways for the Trump administration to address this situation at this point, Mike? I mean, you've done this. You've been on this battlefield before many times.
Yeah,
and you've succeeded. And you've succeeded,
4
Mike.
years. Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
So
I've been on this field.
What should they do?
Years. What they should do is really look and broadcast and make clear to the American public what these 2 and others, there are other groups too, are really about. And diffuse the protest by virtue of the fact that these groups are merely covers for an agenda that isn't being clearly stated, that is under the cover and that is not being made manifest. So they dupe a lot of people into following after their footsteps and marching in step with them when they're hiding their true colors. You know, that's the real thing I would do first. Anti-propaganda campaign has to be the first order of business. And then the enforcement of the rule of law, Dave. I mean, this is a nation built on law. And what is law? Law is there to protect us. It isn't about restraining us. It's about protecting us against criminality. That has to be made clear. Trump should get out and say, what are laws about? Laws aren't restraining mechanisms, only for criminals. That's the thing. So we need to get the rule of law reestablished here.